So today we are very honored to host Dr. Vishnu Khade. In his background, he is a nationally recognized scientist. He is an enthusiastic, result-oriented, and undaunted leader with more than 30 years of professional commitment and contribution to utility, deregulation, energy conservation, environmental policy planning, and management of global issues. He brings comprehensive experience and thoroughly researched information to his audience. His resolute pursuit for management by team approach, promoting individual responsibility and performance, and pledge for excellence have brought about extraordinary results, even in the highly bureaucratic environments. His persuasive presentation style is complemented by superb delivery and blended with delicate humor. Dr. Khade, thank you very much for joining us here today. Just before we get started with our presentation, I'll just let the audience know you will be presenting from your PowerPoint for until about 1:15, sharing some of your experiences working internationally. And at that point, we will pause and open it up for discussion with the audience. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat. I will then ask Dr. Khade the question at the 1:15 to 1:30 portion of our program, or we can certainly jump into a conversation at that point. Okay, so I will thank you, Dr. Khade, and
yes.
I look forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, my friends. This is my home away from home. I'm pointing it to you. This is an oil rig. Actually, it can be used for both purposes, oil as well as natural gas. This is in Caspian Sea. So there are times when I spend at least a week or two on this particular structure right in the middle of the Caspian Sea. And we'll see what Caspian Sea is like in a few minutes. So today, I travel to a lot of different places around the world. I have by now traveled to more than 100 countries, and I have worked in many of them, most of them. So today, I'm going to focus on just a few areas: Russia, Caspian Sea, and Middle East. I started my career in the energy field more than 30 years ago when I was a student back at University of Cincinnati. I was fortunate enough to get involved with these global topics, issues, and I started working in Soviet Union of that time. And my specific interest was in Yamal Peninsula. So let us see where it is. So this is our Soviet Union. Now part of it is Russia and all these breakaway republics. And right here, this tiny area that is jetting out toward the North Pole. Practically all of this Yamal Peninsula is above the Arctic Circle. So I remember my very first trip going to this region. So we landed in St. Petersburg, and then by helicopter, Aeroflot, it was a military part of it at that time, we flew to this Yamal Peninsula. There is absolutely nothing along the way. It's all practically arid region, at times covered with lots of snow, and there is no road, nothing. Now there is a kind of one railway. So it is one track railway that you can use to reach the bottom part of Yamal Peninsula. And people travel because there are people who live in that area. So we'll talk about that in a second. The significance of this area, as we will see in the next slide, is it has a huge quantity of oil and natural gas. So this is the region, as you can see, the red part. So there are two important resources. One is oil and other is natural gas. Put together, it is called crude, C-R-U-D-E, crude. So we try to extract, and as a member of United States government, as well as part of the United Nations, I had a chance to travel to this area more than 30 times so far. So practically at least once a year, I go to this area. So from here, the original idea, which is now working out beautifully, is to put the pipeline, and we are going to see parts of the pipeline and the conditions. It comes all the way from here, coming to Europe, and that is to Finland. So this particular region called crude, that is oil as well as natural gas, is brought into Finland. And then in Finland, we turn that into plastic pellets. So plastic pellets are then sent all over the world. So think about when you go to grocery store and you use your plastic bags, even to put the bananas or the fruits or vegetables. All those plastic bags actually are made from the plastic pellets that are produced in Finland from the oil and natural gas that comes from this particular region. That work is extremely dirty. It is not somebody would like to do in their backyard. And that's why we don't do that in the United States. So practically all the plastic that we use essentially comes from Finland. And it is an extremely polluting activity. And Russia produces that natural resource, which then comes to Finland, and then we use it, and that's what gets used. Just to share with you, when I remember going first, in those days, these conditions were quite easy to notice and observe. This is also called yurt, a chum, C-H-U-M, as you can see here on the side. And that's how these native people live. So this area, Yamal, is also known as edge of the world because there is nothing beyond this Yamal Peninsula where people live. Then there are scientific research centers, and they are used by the scientific community from around the world from time to time, but it is not permanently used. But these are the people who live there literally all their life for generations. And they migrate. They don't live in one place, depending on the kind of availability of food. And their life is mostly dependent on reindeer. So wherever the reindeer would go, that whole group, this particular chum or yurt can be assembled or disassembled in less than a day. So it's not like a very complicated structure, very easy to put together. And it is absolutely comfortable to live inside. It doesn't look that fashionable like for our modern lifestyle, but it is very comfortable and quite warm in addition to that. So let us continue with the concept. Now I'm going to just give you the overview of the breakaway republics. As we know, like some of these regions like Belarus, Poland, Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, many of these areas were part of the Soviet Union and domination. So in late 80s and early 90s, these things started moving away from the Soviet control. So now they are independent regions and countries. The interesting thing about this is the region here, which is called Caspian Sea. And we are going to spend a lot of time talking about that also, because by several estimates, there is more oil and natural gas in Caspian Sea than what we find in Saudi Arabia and Iran put together. Only thing is having access to it. I'll just remind you of the two interesting families. One I'm sure all of you are familiar with is Nobel Prize. So the Nobel family, they were chemists and they operated from this Azerbaijan. So there is a place called Baku, which we are going to see in a minute. And Baku was their territory. And there is another family called Rothschild. So going back to late 17th century and early 18th century, they dominated this region, controlled the oil and natural gas business from Caspian Sea, starting in Baku, and then we'll see what happened to that. So this is a region. So I have been able to work in Azerbaijan, then in Georgia, and then coming to Turkey, and then coming into the Mediterranean Sea. As you can see here, Turkey. So Azerbaijan to Georgia to Turkey into southern part of Turkey, the place called Ceyhan. And I will tell you about some of the interesting projects that are in pipeline. We will be extending this pipeline from Ceyhan, which is at the southern tip of Turkey, through Mediterranean Sea. So it will be underwater pipeline that will extend to Haifa. Haifa is the northern tip of Israel. And then from there, it will be taken to other parts of Israel for consumption and use and also refining. So we will talk about some of those projects. There is another thing that I'm going to talk about, Azerbaijan and then Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is a very interesting country because even though Russia has, in a way, given up Kazakhstan and allowed them to be an independent country, but the proving ground, so essentially a lot of their weapon testing still takes place in Kazakhstan. You probably have heard of our space center in Florida, like from where our Apollo missions used to take off and go to moon and beyond. So Cape Canaveral is in Florida. Similarly, in Kazakhstan, there is a place called Baikonur. And Baikonur is a place that is still in use by not only the Russians, but many of the other countries in the world, including the United States. So after our space shuttle program was closed down, how do you think our astronauts would go to space? So we had to fly our astronauts all the way to Russia. And in the outskirts of Moscow, there are training centers where astronauts from all around the world are trained. Then from there, they travel to Kazakhstan to Baikonur. And that's exactly where they stay for a couple of weeks. And then they take off to go to space station or for other space-related activities. There is a beautiful book called Endurance. You may have heard of Scott Kelly. He's an astronaut. They're twin brothers. So one brother stayed on Earth, and other brother Scott actually went into space, and he stayed on the space station for more than a year. So you can go to YouTube and you can see this entire 1 year story in space. And also the book called Endurance. It's a fascinating book, and you will enjoy learning about his adventures in space. So we'll talk about this particular region also. So we are now working on oil projects through Kazakhstan, coming to China, and then eventually going to Mongolia. So we'll see that in a second. On the world stage, as you can see, this is our map of world. And right in the middle is a green region. We call it the Kazakhstan, and Caspian Sea is the right white area, and the rest of the Russian territory. This is the pipeline that I worked on. This is called Baku Tbilisi Ceyhan pipeline. So Baku is right here in Azerbaijan, as you can see, at the tip. And then through Azerbaijan, the pipeline starts. And these are the geopolitical reasons why it was, instead of going right through Armenia, which would have saved hundreds of miles, we decided to go to Tbilisi, which is in Georgia. And then we come down into Turkey to come to Ceyhan, which is the southern tip of Turkey, into Mediterranean Sea. So we could have done this way. Armenia is very interesting and close to especially Connecticut, because we have a lot of Armenian people in Connecticut, Armenian churches in Connecticut. Armenia is predominantly a Christian country. But in spite of that, these are the geopolitical issues and reasons why we decided to avoid Armenia and go into Georgia, which is a Muslim-dominated country. Armenia being very close to Iran, their relationship with Iran is far better than their relationship with United States. And that's why United States was really not very eager to even acknowledge the Armenian genocide. But we have allowed a lot of Armenians to move to Connecticut, and they are here in Connecticut. So this is about 1,100 miles or so, as you can see, the pipeline, which goes to Georgia, and then it comes into Ceyhan. So we'll continue with this kind of concept. So this is our Caspian Sea, and this is Baku right here. And on the other side are other countries. And these other countries are Turkmenistan, and then Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan. All those countries are on the right-hand side of the screen. So here, there are so many pipelines going from one part to another, and we will take a look at that as we continue. This area is very important because so many countries claim their territory as Caspian Sea. Once upon a time, before the First World War, before the development and creation of Soviet Union, Iran controlled this practically entire Caspian Sea. But unfortunately, the technology to extract oil and natural gas was not available. So the Britishers essentially controlled Iran, and the Britishers controlled this region, but still the technology wasn't there. It was one of the very interesting individuals you may have heard of is Winston Churchill. He was in South Africa in Durban before he became the Naval Secretary of England. At that time, it was the British Empire. So he was sitting in South Africa in Johannesburg, but studying intently the oil and natural gas situation in Iran, and eventually how he used those resources And the Iran was really taken for a ride. Iran did not get practically anything out of their whole oil and natural gas. But we'll talk about that some other time. So continuing with this, our Caspian Sea, this is the Caspian Sea area. And different countries control different resources. As you can see, this mountainous region, this particular region that goes through Iran, that actually defines the religion of Iranian people. This particular region, before Christianity or even before Judaism, it was known to be the land called Persia. And Persia is the land of Parsis, Parsi. And their religion was Zoroastrianism. So they followed the prophet or the founder of the religion, and his name was Zarathustra. Eventually, when Islam came to that region in the 7th and 8th century, majority of these people got converted into Islam, and those who decided not to accept Islam had to run for their life, and they were given shelter in India. So practically majority of these Parsis, Parsi, are now living in India following their religion. Interesting story about that is this mountain range is called Zagros Mountains. And the beauty of this region is continuously the oil is coming out of the natural places, ground, earth, mountains, and natural gas. So oil and natural gas, they ooze out of the earth. And thousands of years ago, somehow there was a flame ignited, and that particular flame is called eternal flame and became a symbol of this Zoroastrian philosophy. So if you ever get a chance to visit a temple of Zoroastrian people or Parsis, you will see the eternal flame used, and they consider flame as their god or representation of God. So that's the area called the Zagros Mountains. And Iran, as you can see, like controls a little bit of natural gas, some amount of oil, but other countries really control most of it. Put together, it is way more than what you can find in Saudi Arabia and Iran put together. So this is one of the interesting things. When I was younger, I could participate in all that. I didn't do any work. I'm just an advisor. I'm not a worker, so I don't physically do anything. I just observe, I study, I analyze, I think about it, and I provide my advice. But I don't do anything. But we get a chance to visit and see and explore all these fascinating activities. This is way under ocean. So you have a wetsuit, you go in the water, and you can observe and see the work that is getting done. So this is underwater welding in the Caspian Sea near Baku. This is my home away from home, as I said right in the beginning. This is actual a rig. This is a completed rig, and now it's a calm sea. So there is no upheaval that you can notice. You're going to see that in a couple of slides. And now when it is steady, most of these rigs are not really anchored completely or stable in the water. So they're tethered. So there are cables, there are ropes, and then they are anchored so they could at least move around and freely float a short distance around their mean location. So we will see what happens in the rough seas and high seas. When there is wind, these particular structures, right now they look very stable, but they can move to the extent of about 40 to 45 degrees. And imagine standing on it and working. These are the people who are there stationed to work for at least a 2 week at a time. And continuously, it's like on a hammock, like a baby who sleeps on a hammock. It is like that. So you also have a belt which is attached to the constraints so you don't fall off. But if you do fall off, there are people always available to pull you out. So let us take a look at completed structure. So helicopters can come here, land here, and take off from here. So people are brought in majority of the times, and they are brought in here on helicopter ride. Now, as you can see, like this is a tanker. This tanker is almost to the capacity of 1 million barrel liquid equivalent. So you can imagine 1 million barrels, and one barrel is 42 gallons. So imagine it's millions of gallons of oil is there in this one tanker. So they get the oil out of natural gas and then put it here, and then it is taken to other places. This is unfortunately one of the things. I'm on the other side of this particular inferno, as you are noticing. So here I'm on the right-hand side, bottom corner in the background. And when you are exploring for oil, extracting the oil from the ground or ocean, suddenly you hit a pocket of natural gas. You cannot take both of the things out at the same time, one or the other. So if you are taking out oil and suddenly you come in contact with natural gas, it has to be blown out and it has to be burned. And these flames are so huge. So it is almost like somebody is shooting the flame. So you can hear a very, very loud boom every few seconds. Boom, boom, boom. So the natural gas is pushed out and these flames are burnt at such high intensity that from even space, you can observe these flames. So it's quite a fearsome or scary experience. But this is part of the work that they do. So coming to the rough seas. So this is in the rough seas. Imagine like if you are working on this structure, which is going to be moving in every possible direction, it's not that easy. The work has to go on. And these people, no matter what, run, rain, sun, darkness, it doesn't matter. They work under all these conditions. So it is something very interesting. So this is another region that is now getting developed and explored. So this is our Caspian Sea, and this is called Tengiz oil field. British Petroleum is heavily invested with billions of dollars of investment in this particular project. So continuing with our thinking, so this is our pipeline, which is going to come from Ceyhan under the Mediterranean Sea to a place called Haifa, which is the northern tip of Israel. Now, interestingly, in just last a few months, a very interesting business development. Many of you probably are keeping track of this individual. He was the third richest person on earth at that time. And the Hindenburg Group, headed and supported by some of the interesting people in our country, were responsible to bring that person down from number 3 in the world to number 17 in the world in terms of his wealth. But he is going to come back because he is extremely savvy. Beautiful thing is, in just about a month or two ago, he was in Haifa, and Haifa is now in the hands of Adani Business Empire. And that particular, if you go to Google or YouTube, you'll be able to just type in Adani, ADANI, and Netanyahu, and they will be sharing the stage, and they will be talking about the opening of this Haifa corridor. So Haifa is going to be controlled by Adani Group, and they are going to be in charge of developing this entire region. And they will be the recipient, actually the first recipient of this oil and gas coming from Ceyhan under the Mediterranean Sea. The reason for this particular project was to avoid Lebanon and Syria because it's a difficult region to put the pipeline in. So the decision was taken by United Nations that the pipeline will be right through the Mediterranean. There's nothing unusual. This is quite common. So this is an interesting new project that our team is going to be part of. Continuing further, I just wanted to show you some other pipelines in this region. Caspian Sea, this is one region that we have completed first level of pipelines, but now the second and third level of pipelines will continue. Then this is the area from Kazakhstan, so that will be another project. And then this is the third project, which is coming from Caspian Sea and then going through Afghanistan. Fortunately, I have had opportunity to go to Iran, Iraq, all these Middle Eastern countries, breakaway republics, as well as Afghanistan. So it is not as dangerous as we are made to believe through the TV news. It is relatively fine, and we, of course, have a lot of security to take care of us. The pipeline will go through Afghanistan. This particular work is going on for more than 30 years. So because of the political upheaval, conflicts, things didn't happen. But eventually, all that is going to come all the way. This is called Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. So TAPI 1, TAPI 2, they will come all the way to India. All the oil will get refined in Gujarat, which is the largest refinery on earth. So this is a very interesting group. You may have heard of the group of the people called Ambani, A-M-B-A-N-I, Ambani. So they are also right up there in the top 20 very rich people. But the thing is, they are the refiners of crude oil for the rest of the world. In fact, like you probably will be surprised to hear, right now we have sanctions on Russia. But do you know that the oil from Russia is still being sold to two countries? And one is India and the second is China. So the oil comes to India, India refines it. And when we purchase our gasoline or jet fuel, guess what? It comes from India. So it is Indian oil. It is not the Russian oil. And these are part of the geopolitical situations. And we all know that, we have accepted that, but that's how the business works. So the Russian oil comes to India, and then that oil gets refined in India, becomes Indian oil, and then gets sold to other countries. So this is now looking at the working conditions. Akadu is in Kazakhstan. So as you can see the snow, this is all flat ground, some mountainous hilly area. And as you can see, like these are huge tankers. Some of these tankers, the largest one right now that we have, carries about 2 million barrels of oil. 2 million barrels, imagine that oil. We in the United States consume about 20 million barrels of oil on a daily basis. So 10 of these tankers come to the United States every single day. Even though we produce a lot, we don't really use much of our own oil because we can only refine 25% of our daily use. So 75% of the oil that gets refined for us comes from other countries. We don't refine it. And again, that is a political issue because we don't have the capacity to refine all that oil. So my team is an advisory team. So we go to these places, we explore, we find out, we offer the technical assistance, and then we work with the International Monetary Fund, IMF, as well as the World Bank to make sure that the funding is in place. They get the money, we inspect, investigate from time to time to make sure that the work is getting done exactly the way we prescribed. So once that is done, the oil and natural gas gets transported to whichever country that is going to do the refining work for us. So this is a fascinating thing to see. We'll take a look at more about these kinds of pipelines. Some of these pipelines are so big, you may have seen some of the James Bond movies. They are almost 80 inches in diameter. So what it means, like you can stand straight and walk through it, and there will be another foot or foot and a half above your head if you're 6.5 feet tall. So imagine, I mean, these are huge, huge pipes. And of course, like there are mechanical devices in which we travel when we are in these pipeline areas. I don't think I can walk like this kind of distance because they go up and down in the hilly area. This is all sand. So it is 100% sand. And we'll see a little bit about making roads in the sand as we continue. So these are the working conditions, extremely, extremely difficult. From time to time, like, you have these areas where the oil has to be reheated along the way. And we'll see that. How that gets reheated. If we don't keep that oil warm, it is going to freeze. The temperature can easily get down to minus 30, minus 40, even minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and oil will freeze and nothing will move through these pipelines. So we'll take a look at that. As you can see, the pipe is getting installed in this region. And these are huge, huge pipes. As I said, almost 80 inches in diameter. So looking at the working conditions, like some of the hilly areas where the work goes through, the work is continuing literally all 12 months of the year. So it doesn't matter what the conditions are, the work must be done and work must be continued. And as you can see, there is hardly anything, so you can take a coffee break to go and get anything to enjoy your life. And you will see the coffee break too. And, and that is not, these people live there. People like me, we get airlifted and immediately taken to a nice place to stay for the night. We don't stay there. But these people, they stay there literally for the duration of their work for almost 3 to 6 months at a time. So this is actually the working area. So these are the heaters. So as you can see, like right every 15 to 20 miles, like you need to heat the oil. So you have to continuously keep it warm. And if you don't keep it warm, it will not flow. It will freeze. So the oil or natural gas that is getting transported, part of it is going to get used to keep it warm. So you have to keep it warm. And these are the actual real pictures because, these are the places that we go, we investigate, we make sure that everything is working properly. Some of the things that are, again, they find gas in between, and then it has to be flared out. But it's very, very interesting. And as you can see, the temperature has to be kept warm enough so it will flow through these areas. So continuing further, this is now coming to China. This is our China, and our pipeline from Kazakhstan, we already have come to Urumqi. So Urumqi is a place, and you probably have heard of this place called Wuhan. That's where our Wuhan virus, or we can call it our COVID-19. And now there is unfortunately, they just recently found the first human victim of bird flu just in last week. And that was from this Wuhan area. I just wanted to show it to you where Wuhan is. Wuhan is on the border close to Shanghai and Beijing. And on the other side, this is where we go most of the time, and that is called Urumqi. Urumqi is also quite infamous because of Uyghur Muslims. So these are the camps, and they call it re-education camps. Of course, because we go with the United Nations and we have a diplomatic passport, we don't really need to worry about anything. And we also have the protection. So these are extremely difficult areas to think about. Our interest from the United Nations is to be able to go right through China to the southern tip of Mongolia. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. If that doesn't work out, we can always go from Kazakhstan into Russia, then into Mongolia, and then come all the way to this region. The reason for that is because there is copper, which is the second largest copper extraction point on the face of the earth. And we need that. And we will talk about that when we come to that part. But right now, as we see, is we have been already here at Urumqi. Our interest is to bring energy resources into this area. Hopefully, it will help them develop this region into industrial area, because right now it is barely occupied. There is hardly any industry. So if we can bring energy resources, we can tap into the human capital or labor, and we can use this region to be as productive as our Shanghai and Beijing area is. Shanghai, Beijing, Chengdu, all these areas, or Chongqing, these areas are quite industrialized in comparison to this western part of China. As now we see even more working conditions and how difficult and dangerous they could be, but they are something very interesting to see. This is the road making in the sand. So they are putting a screen, metallic screen under the sand to stabilize the sand. The sand will not easily blow away. And now on this, the heavy truck or the machinery, as we saw here, all this machinery can easily move through this region, and we could carry. And these are the people that literally are working with their physical efforts. So yes, there are machines, but not as nice as they could be. So it's a human intensive work or labor intensive work. These are the working conditions. So yes, if we are there and if we just need a cup of coffee or some snack, these are the places where these people live. This is where they live for 3 months, 6 months at a time. So no matter what the temperature outside is, 30 degrees, 40 degrees, 50 degrees below zero, these are the place and tents in which they live. And this is where they work. And fortunately, as they close these flaps, and then there is a lot of heat inside, so they're okay, they're comfortable. But working outside is definitely not easy at all. Even walking is difficult. There are some interesting situations we don't even have any clue, because these are absolutely flat areas in relative terms. When the winds blow, they are really not even stopped by any tree or mountains or hills. So they are called katabatic winds. And sometimes the wind speed is so high. These are some of the highest recorded wind speeds on Earth after North Pole and South Pole. So these winds could be 180, 200 miles per hour. We never experienced anything like that in even the highest level of storms. And there is nothing else happening except the wind. So what happens is when the wind is blowing that hard, these people cannot even stand the way they are standing on their 2 feet. They have to be on all four. So if they have to cross from one particular area to the next area, they have to crawl on all their four. You will not be able to stand like this because you will be knocked down before even you know. And I have seen and experienced that kind of wind. So it is impossible to stand like that. But imagine these people have to not only live there, survive there, and work under those challenging conditions. And they do. So this is coming to our Urumqi, and this is a bridge coming from Kazakhstan into China. So this is really very close to the border, and these are the bridges which are getting built so that even the trucks and railway line can be put so we can come into the area of Urumqi. Right now, the Chinese government has given us the permission to come all the way to Urumqi, but after doing that, the relationship with China is really falling apart. It is not really in good shape right now. Some of you may have heard that now even iPhone is getting moved out of China. China can produce, we have given them the technology to be able to produce the chips, the microchips. But the microchips that China can produce are about 200 nanometer thick. And 200 nanometer thick is extremely small. Nanometer means 10 to the power of -9 meter. Extremely thin chips. But they are not good for the military equipment or space program. For that, you need 60 nm. So 60 nanometer thick. And we don't want to give that technology to China, so we don't want China to be able to produce that. And now we are trying to move all that industry from China to other countries, to Vietnam, Philippines, India, and many other places. Just last year, India was able to export more than $10 billion worth of Apple products from India alone. So things are changing. And now that is why we are concerned about China giving us the permission to go through China to take it to the southern border of Mongolia. So we'll see how it goes. But right now, we are putting all the things together. So if we get a chance, we are ready this way. If not, we will go through Kazakhstan and through Russia. But unfortunately, we are not on the good terms with Russians either at this time. But business is business, and Russia will allow, and we will be able to eventually get through that region. So geopolitics. This is where finally the things settle down. And that's what we call money diplomacy. And this is a very powerful topic, money diplomacy. We get involved into that. I do not claim that I'm an expert in it, but my background is in energy. I have a PhD in nuclear engineering, and I have an extensive background in international politics and economics as well. So thinking about that, I become one of the influential member of this team. So this is a fascinating activity. I get an opportunity. I'm very fortunate to be part of it. I don't by any chance claim to be an expert, but at least I get a chance to study. On an average, I spend at least about 4 to 5 hours every day reading and analyzing the international energy related activities. That's what I do. I don't do anything physically. I don't have any, I have an office in Hartford, but I rarely get to the office. Majority of my work is thinking, reading, analyzing. So I can do that even sitting on a toilet. Very interesting kind of work that we do. So these are some of the books. If you are interested in international politics, Chalmers Johnson was a professor. Interestingly, he worked for CIA as well as an analyst. So he has written these interesting books, 3 books. Chalmers Johnson, American Enterprise Association. That's what he used to work for. And he was a professor in California. So this is now coming to Mongolia. The Mongolia is the Oyu Tolgai, which is on the border of China and southern part of Mongolia. Mongolia is becoming one of the very, very interesting and developed countries. You will find so many Americans traveling to this area, going to Ulaanbaatar. And if you ever get a chance to travel to Ulaanbaatar, you will be surprised. It is in a way more modern than what we are in the United States. And it is all because of the natural resources that they have. So this is a particular area, Turquoise Hill, Oyu Tolgai. That's where we go. And that's where we are helping them. I have fortunately had an opportunity to go way deep under these mines. Some of these mines are more than 5,000 feet deep underground. And there is absolutely nothing. So we are right here in Ulaanbaatar, which is about 500 kilometers in the north. And Ulaanbaatar is the capital. And from there, we travel in helicopters. We come there, we stay there for a day at the most 2, and then we work in these mines, and then we go back. The reason why we are going there is this is just a diagram to share with you, to show you that the futuristic electric cars will require minimum 183 all the way to 300 pounds of copper, and we don't have it. So if we want to turn our economy moving away from the gas guzzling vehicles to electric vehicles, we need that copper. And we need that copper fast to be able to change it to what we want to do. So as we can see, Oyu Tolgai is a fascinating mining district. And we need to develop that to such an extent that it's all desert. And we need to bring that oil, energy resources so that we could create small settlements for people to live in who will be working there really day in and day out. With this mine, we will be able to find resources for next at least 35 years. So we'll have plenty of copper in addition to that gold and other minerals. So moving to that, next slide, I just want to share with you, like this is my playground. This is a lot of my work does take place. I have been to Saudi Arabia, I have been to Yemen, I have been to many other places. Here, one of the interesting projects I just want to mention to you as the last thought is there will be a bridge between the part of Western Yemen into a place called Djibouti. Djibouti is a very tiny nation, and once that bridge over this Red Sea is put together, you will be able to drive a car all the way starting in Beijing or Shanghai and go all the way to Senegal, Dakar on the western side of African continent. So you won't even ever have to go into the water. So it will be a land route, like a modern day Silk Road. That is one of the projects that my team is working on. And something very interesting to mention to you is we all have heard about the very infamous individual, Bin Laden. Bin Laden's family owns one of the largest construction companies on the earth. And guess what? Bin Laden's family will be in charge of constructing this bridge. There is also associated project is greening of Sahara. So this entire Sahara, Northern Sahara, will be turned green like the forested land. So there are so many interesting projects that we get a chance to be part of. We work in this area, and that's what we would eventually like to see. We get a chance because of thanks to all of you, your tax dollars, your contributions, your support, and your encouragement helps us explore the world, participate in the activities, travel all over the places, and then contribute in a little way we could. Once interesting thought, like about a country called Djibouti. Djibouti is a very tiny country. It used to be part of French government. French controlled this area, and that's why the name sounds like a French. People speak French, and can you imagine world's largest diarrhea research center is located in a country called Djibouti. And that's where our United States military that goes into the Middle East and this region is trained, and they work with these soldiers so that when they are on special missions, diarrhea doesn't trouble them and bother them. Imagine if you are going to be on the mission to capture or kill Bin Laden, and that's an overnight mission. Within a matter of few hours, everything has to be taken care of. And suddenly, if you are fit with diarrhea, the mission will be a failure. So how do you control all that? All that particular research and treatment is taken care of in a place called Djibouti. Djibouti is extremely important. It is very close to Somalia on one side and Eritrea on other side. Very difficult region to work with. And this is, you probably have seen Captain Phillip, the movie, and we go to this region and we can talk about this some other time. But this is a fascinating area, fascinating political situation, but we have our home base right in Djibouti. I removed all the military related slides from the presentation because this is not the presentation related to that. Ours is a different audience. So we just limited that to energy resources and working conditions and the kinds of things that we do. So I'm done with my presentation, and I would be delighted to speak with you if there is anything that I could answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Khade, for your presentation and for sharing so much. I know I learned a lot just in listening in the last 45 minutes. So thank you. I'll ask before I ask my questions. Does anybody have a question or comment to Dr. Khade's presentation?
Please call me Vishnu. That is easy. You don't have to be so formal.
Ken.
You knew I was going to come up with something, right?
I mean, my screen is a little different today, so I'm just trying to go through it. But the first thing I saw was your hand up. So, Ken.
It seems to me that this work and these efforts make it look like global citizenship is an accomplished fact because everybody seems to be reasonably working together to create these huge international projects. But I guess I'm too cynical to believe that all of this holds together under the pressures of the war in Yemen, the terrorism coming out of Iran or being supported by Iran, and so on. How do the politics play into the bigger picture? Is there just so much money that the politics doesn't play?
Religion and the religious divisions, politics, as well as the differences, they're always there, will be there for the world to take note of. But you probably may have realized or heard about the recent friendship between Shia and Sunni, that is Saudi Arabia and Iran. Why? Finally, it comes down to money diplomacy. So every country in the world, no matter how much we shout and scream and display our pleasure or displeasure or anger, we all get involved into that. And majority of the common people do get excited about these issues. But finally, what matters and comes down to is what's in it for us. And every country is thinking in the same way. So yes, there are setbacks, there are plenty of setbacks. It doesn't happen overnight. Just because we planned and we agreed, the agreement is only for a short period of time. Again, like there will be some reason the agreements will be broken. But then a little later, we come back together and we continue our work. So I'm just an analyst. I'm just an advisor. I don't have the authority to make anything happen. So my job or my team's work is we persuade people, we persuade the politicians, we persuade the decision makers, we encourage them to see the positive side of the things that we would like to accomplish and see happen. And sometimes because of whatever reasons that they have, they may agree or they may disagree. And that's okay. That is part of life. Everything is not going to work as smoothly as we would like to see it happen. But the bottom line is majority of the people, just to give you a simple example, my team, our responsibility is 7th-generation planning. So not something that is going to happen today, tomorrow, or in the next 10 years. It is, we are thinking in the extremely long-term philosophical basis called 7 generations. So yes, things are going to change. Things are not going to go as smoothly as we would like them to see happen. But eventually, it's up to us how we negotiate our path right through that.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
Huh? It's an honor, sir.
Anybody else have a question? I thought I saw Dr. Kanya getting ready. Okay, I was right.
Oh, you know me well. When you are working with such huge projects, that I'm just wondering how the degradation of the earth, when you're building these roads, what is the overall impact? 7 generations from now, how are these? What's the result? Final result to the planet and to the area.
Yes, actually, that's really, really very interesting question that you think of. Is environment is also on our mind. We are thinking about it literally through every step of it. But bottom line is we are still consumed with the idea of using more and more energy resources. That is first thing. These are just the interim ideas. Whether we use oil, we use natural gas, we use copper. But as you can see, we are in a way, the theme is how to get away from fossil fuels. Between 84 to 86% of the global energy today still comes from fossil fuels. That is coal, oil, and natural gas. But the idea is how we can move away from natural gas. Just to give you one interesting story, the largest solar power plant is installed recently in Morocco, in the middle of the desert. On the Mediterranean, the largest solar power plant, you can imagine, is in Morocco. We don't talk about it. Unfortunately, for some reason, we are not so enthusiastic about solar, wind, and other sources like geothermal. We could use ocean energy. There are a lot of interesting things we could consider doing, but other countries are taking it very seriously. If you go to Riyadh, if you go to Saudi Arabia, I have been to Saudi Arabia several times. I haven't been to Mecca because I'm not Muslim, and out of respect, I mean, I could go there, but it is not supposed to be for non-Muslims. So non-Muslims shouldn't be going into Mecca. So I haven't been inside. But all along the way from Jeddah to Mecca, Jeddah is a starting point for their pilgrimage from in Saudi Arabia to go to Mecca. Entire region is now completely covered with solar power. Many of the countries, you won't imagine the railroad tracks, right between the tracks, on the side of the tracks, there are solar panels generating solar electricity. So even though we don't use it that much, that is our eventual plan. And greening of Sahara is one of such projects. So the reason for greening of Sahara is once that area becomes green, the global temperature will slowly come down. Right now, in presence of extreme amount of carbon dioxide, plants thrive. Now they just need an impetus, such as water management and some amount of technology to convert that desert area landscape into green area, which will automatically start bringing the temperature down. So there are different plans that are thought of. I'm not part of every project, but we also work with people who do these kinds of things. So yes, as you asked, the question is, what about the environment? In short run, that is a challenge we have to face. So just because we send the oil to India doesn't necessarily mean we are avoiding the problem. We are just shifting the problem from United States to another region. But for that, we have to move away from our fascination with fossil fuels. To give you an example, in India, now they are moving in a major way on hydrogen fuel. And Iceland is one of the regions, because of geothermal energy, they are now taking energy from the earth itself to dissociate water to get hydrogen, which can be used as fuel. So the trains, they are going to start in another few years. They already have started trial runs to run the actual train from coast to coast on hydrogen fuel. So imagine that, we don't even talk about it. We don't even think about it in our country, but it can be done. We have absolutely all technology in the world. We have all the resources in the world. Only thing we need is the political mindset. And it will happen. If not today, someday it is going to happen. Because right now we are noticing the climate shift. What is happening right now in Florida, tremendous amount, 1 in 1,000-year event is happening in Florida, 14 to 20 inches of rain and more on the way. So when the things like that happen, people will recognize we have to move away from fossil fuels. It has to be done, and it will be done. If not today, at least in the next 20, 30 years, we will be doing that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Vishnu? I'm just checking to make sure that I didn't miss anything.
Okay.
Carrie asked, what is the most rewarding part of your job?
Meeting people from different parts. And I tell you, I have a lot of fascinating experiences. First is food. I'm vegetarian. I'm really very careful in what I can eat and what I cannot eat. So it was very challenging 30 years ago because they didn't know me and I didn't know them. I didn't know their lifestyle and habits. So it was very difficult. But I remember going to Yamal Peninsula in my early visits. I have lived on black coffee and rock hard bread for a week or 2 weeks at a time. And when they saw that, when they realized that, now I have absolutely nothing to worry about. I can go all the way to Mali in Timbuktu and I get exactly the kind of food I eat. In fact, I will be going to Congo in next couple of months. we are working with Democratic Republic of Congo. So we get a chance to travel, we get a chance to meet people, we can really interact with them. And fortunately, because I have been traveling so much, they know me and they make sure that we are taken care of. So that is one of my rewarding experiences, meeting people and realizing how much they care about our contributions.
Thank you very much, Vishnu, for sharing so much of your expertise and your travels around the world. I know I learned a lot in the last hour of what's going on and how it's shaping our local community as well. As much as we're talking at the international scale, a lot of the projects you're talking about shape our everyday lives, and we don't just not even see it. So thank you again.
Thank you.
So really
and
quick,
I really appreciate the opportunity to interact with all of you and meet with you online and speak with you. But I teach here. I'm here at Goodwin College. So anytime you want to come and have a cup of coffee with me, I would love to do that. So I'm here in the Center for Teaching. So that's my another home away from home. So I come here, I work with Carrie, I work with Paula. They're always there to help me. So I'm always here. So if you ever want to come and have a cup of coffee and chat with me, please, I would love to do that.
we'll have our next session over coffee in the Center for Teaching Excellence. We'll have to plan it. Very
It
quickly.
will be an honor.
Very quickly, Brian, Dr. Dixon will be joining us, as he just put in the chat. So very quickly, before we end, thank you for coming to our session today. And you're welcome to the University of Bridgeport as well, from the comments. Okay, let me get back on track for a second. Thank you for joining our session today. This is our final session of our spring semester. I also want to say that we missed it last month, but Community Conversations is officially 1 year old. We started in March 2020, so it is amazing to believe it's been already a year. This is our 14th lecture. And we are planning more. What I'm going to leave in the comments in the chat box right here is the link to our YouTube. Thank you to all of our speakers for their contributions and their willingness, to have it be recorded. We are able to rewatch the lectures as many times as we can, or if you have missed it, you can watch it. I know I owe a few people on this call an email about things being posted. So if there's any lecture that you would like to review, they are all available there. Right, May 13th or the 14th. Yes, Ken has been to each session except for one, and we have to fix that. So we will be working on fixing that. So if anybody would like to review the year of lectures, they are all available on our YouTube page. If you are an educator and would like to use them in your classroom, please feel free, because we're hearing from world experts in their fields, and they are giving us their expertise and sharing, and we are very, very grateful, because that is one of the contributing factors to our success at Community Conversations. We will be planning our summer session. We do just have this time, and we have one little adjustment to make. So I will be updating that very, very soon. We will start back up at the end of May and have a summer session. So more on that in the coming weeks. But again, thank you for all of your contributions. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for the success of Community Conversations. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with you in the summer months.
Thank you.
You have a great afternoon.
Have a great day. Yes.